Both Olin, Kreutz, and Patrick Mannelly picked the Bears to win the game, and boy, were they correct. They, gentlemen, finished 28-13. It was a great finish, and it was the finish that mattered.
It sure was. It sure was, Mully, man. It was fun to watch, Pat. It was fun to watch them play this game against the Detroit Lions. It came out fast, started fast, scored 7 points on their first drive, took the starting kickoff right down the field, had a little bit of a lull, but then they came back, dominated at the end of the game. The defense surely dominated in the second half, and we talked about them having, Pat, more talent when you looked at their roster, having guys who could actually finish, who could actually close games, and I think that's what we saw today at the end of the game.
Yeah, to me, the story is the defense. The second half defense coming out, starting with 3 straight 3-and-outs when we kind of felt the momentum have swung, and we were nervous they were going to come back at the second half and put more points on the board between those 2 possessions, and they stopped them. And they kept this offense, which was sputtering with short fields. I'm sure we'll break that down later and maybe question some of the play calls, but this, to me, is all about this defense. They shut down the number 2 offense in the NFL down to 13 points. And then Mully, they gave the ball away 3 times to the Bears. Yep, they got their 3 takeaways. Yeah. But just the defense, man, they're really coming together. And I think you saw at the end in those those finishing situations, the importance of Montez Sweat. He got a sack, and he helped 2 other guys get sacks. It's nice to see, guys. It's fun to go into a game and a pregame like we talked about, Olin, that we thought they would win, and they went out there and actually played well. And we talked about Matt Eberflus talking about finishing, and they did it. And they did it all the way across the board, and that was good to see. And this thing is really trending in the right direction with these last 2 wins.
And I think that given the fact the Bears came out and they scored 10 points, and you liked where they were at in the game, and then they had this sequence where, I mean, it was awful. They had a 3rd and 2, which they didn't convert, and they came back on 4th down, and they got super cutesy, and they got stuffed, and that pretty much they stopped playing for a while. That was the last we saw their offense in the first half of the game, and you saw Detroit come back at that point, score a couple touchdowns, take a 13-10 lead, and you worried about the second half and how they were going to start the second half. And you said it. The second half was all Bears defense. It was all the Bears defense. And you get to the end of the game, and beware the closer. How do you close games? With defensive ends and cornerbacks, and the Bears have a defensive end, and they looked like a completely different team than the one we saw earlier in the year. They look like a really dangerous team right now. And if I'm another team in the league, I'd want no part of them.
Well, I agreed, and I think it's fortunate the Bears have some of the teams on their schedule at the end of the year that seem even easier than Detroit. Right, they're 9-3 team, and they handled a 9-3 team in the NFL. There's going to be a lot of discussion now. Does this kind of save Matt Eberflus's job? But if they continue doing this, like I said in the pregame show a couple weeks ago, I had him gone. And then what I've seen the last couple of weeks, and especially today, they've shown a lot of improvement. And Coach Eberflus keeps dialing up some darn good game plans, some timely blitzes, some timely run stops, things like that just that gets me impressed. And these guys are playing hard.
Yeah, they come out, right, and they go 3-and-out in that second half, and you guys talk about the defense. But the offense does go 12 plays, and they go 65 yards in 5 minutes, right? And they tie the game up, right? So it was team. The team just – we talked about finishing. We talked about when you looked at this game, when you put the rosters up side by side with Frank Ragnow out, with Olin McNeil out, you said that, okay, this Bears team is a better team, I think, today. They're a better team at home than the Detroit Lions. But can they prove it? Can Coach Eberflus get his guys to win a game and then hold on to the lead late and really dominate? And that's what they did today. Yes. And you got to give them all their credit in the world. Now, we'll get into talking about their matchups against other teams and how they actually match up. Against the Lions, they match up well. They showed that even when they're in Detroit. So this game, though, when you looked at it, you said they should win this football game, right? You don't lose to your 2 best players in the middle of your offensive defense and act like nothing's wrong, right? Like nothing happened. We'll be good. Don't worry about it. No, you lost your all-pro center and you lost your best D tackle. Of course something's going to be missing. So Chicago Bears went out there and won a game I thought they should have won, played well, and Montez Sweat finished at the end, but so did Brisker, right? Yep. When you talk about that play, Pat and Mully, when you talk about that play, that 4th down play to DJ Moore, Didn't like it at all with Getsy, right? Did not like the call at all. But the first thing you're thinking is, are we good enough to overcome this nowadays? And you saw that Tremaine Edmonds in the middle of the field on 4th down, you got to make that play to make that 4th down play go away, right? You have to make those plays. You're making $70 million. But that's just an example of later in the game, he did make the plays. Later in the game, they did close. Later in the game, the guys you're paying money to came out and showed you what is the definition of finished games. They did it.
Yeah, it was, I mean, I know this sounds crazy, but it had kind of a special feeling about it. It had, to see the Bears win a game like that, and it was a very physical football game. There were a lot of big hits on both sides over the course of the game, and frankly, I was getting worried that some of their better finesse players were taking some big shots in that game, including the quarterback and including DJ Moore, and it seemed like he was limping at one point after his 3rd carry. We hadn't seen him used as a running back, and all of a sudden he's being used as a short yardage back. It was just weird. And yet he scored a touchdown in the first half, and then they scored that touchdown on the free play. I guess the Lions never overcame the idea that it was that he wasn't being called for a penalty there when he threw the ball while falling down. I don't know what you guys thought of that play, but they certainly couldn't move beyond it. They jump off sides, free play. DJ Moore made a great move on the defensive back, and they score a touchdown. Great.
A couple things there. First, we'll start with DJ Moore. I got to give Luke Getsy credit because we've been we've been asking for more targets or finding ways to get him the ball. Well, he's doing it. Well, we can argue the 4th down play to get him the ball, but the reverse for the touchdown was great.
Yep.
The end around that he had, I think it was like a little 4 or 5 yard gain, but you're getting the ball in your playmaker's hands now, and I gotta applaud him for that, and I like that. But the other thing is, guys, they scored 28 points. They still left a lot out there. So as a coach, when you bring them in the room, it's a lot easier to break the film down after a win. You're feeling better about yourself, but there's still a lot of things that they can improve on. Justin Fields included. O-line's protection was struggling early, a little bit in the run game as well. But there were a lot of points out there that this should have been even more of a blowout. So if you're looking at it through a coach's eye, that's the way I would talk to those guys. Like, listen, this is what we left out here, and we got things to work on. Congratulations on the win, but there's still things offensively that they need to improve on to get to the level the way the defense played today.
Yeah, hey, Mully, like you mentioned, Aiden Hutchinson jumps off sides right there. The Lions, and then followed by a fumble snap, but he jumps. And DJ Moore, and I think it was Will, I forget his last name, in the pregame show from Detroit told us that Jerry Jacobs, watch for him if he gets matched up on DJ Moore. It might be a problem for the Lions. And sure enough, who does DJ Moore run by on that play, right?
Yes.
And credit the Bears. I think they were just trying to draw him off sides. And I think they would take a shot if they jumped. It was 4th and 13, right?
Yes,
and they draw him, the Aiden Hudson, and then Lucas Patrick heads up, snaps the ball. And look, that's just talking about that situation. The Bears, I'm interested to hear what Eberflus talks about in his post game, if that was the situation they had practiced. That they'll go for it. If they jump, snap it, and just everyone's that can all go special. And DJ Moore runs right by him, and Justin Fields throws the ball. Great pass, but we're talking about finishing. We're talking about guys making plays. That's 2 weeks in a row. Fields to DJ Moore changes the game at the end of the game. Montez Sweat changes the game at the end of the game, right? We talk about players, not plays in those moments. So it was good to see them make that play.
No sweat. I mean, no doubt when Sweat is on the field. That guy has made them a significantly better defense. He really was the missing piece. And, you think about the trade they made for Claypool and what a disaster that was. They double down and they make this trade, and then they give the guy $100 million. Worth every penny. Mm-hmm. That guy is a hell of a football player and helped in a lot of different ways. He is what you talked about, Olin, in terms of the word multiplier.
Definitely. It's definitely what he is. And different than Chase Claypool, right? When you heard about Chase Claypool leaving Pittsburgh, they didn't want him anymore, right?
Right.
The Commanders wanted Montez Sweat when you talk to people from Washington. So it was a different trade for Ryan Poles there. I mean, obviously you're hoping that Chase Claypool would turn around here and move in the right direction. But Montez Sweat, man, like you're talking about, he has drastically improved that pass rush. Yannick Ngakoue running through Taylor Decker early, but Montez Sweat pushing the middle of the pocket so Goff can't step up. Seems like when somebody gets a sack, he's always kind of a part of it, Pat. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that defense, that back end, man, they are playing fast and aggressive. TJ Edwards, Tremaine Edmonds, Brisker, Eddie, Jalen Johnson, another pick, paid a man his money. It's just good to watch them play and win a game today.
Yeah, you're right. And Montez Sweat in the run game as well in that 4th and 1. It looked like he got the penetration to cause the running back to bounce, and they stopped him, and they got the ball back on like the 30-yard line or whatever, and that's Montez Sweat again in a critical situation, not only affecting the passing game but in the running game as well.
I got to tell you, I mean, it's just a really impressive. They're now, I believe, 5-4 on the season, if I'm not mistaken.
I wish.
Yeah, it's funny. I got a text from a friend during the game who said, as Fields was kind of going off and running and doing his thing early, he said how mad he was at the coaches for trying to make the guy a pocket passer too early. That normally you see that happen with someone like Lamar Jackson, who first they kind of let him do his thing, and then they try to develop him more as a passer, as a pocket passer, and that they jumped to that too early with Fields, and how did they not see that to start the season? An interesting criticism, but I think if this team continues to play the way they're playing, there are going to be some really hard conversations and difficult ones in trying to figure out what is the best move going forward.
Well, let me ask you this then, guys, about that conversation. If you're evaluating Justin Fields as Ryan Poles is right now, how did he play today? Where would you grade him on his evaluation of keeping him and not drafting somebody at number 1?
It's a good question, Pat, but I have to look at everything, right?
Yeah.
Like if you would have asked me how I would have thought Justin Fields was going to play today against the Lions, watching his last 3 times he played the Lions, I would have told you he's going to play just like how he played, right? That was a big reason why I won't speak for you, but that's the big reason why I took the Bears over the Lions today, right? I think you have to say, okay, now next week, guys, I don't want to break down next week's opponent before we enjoy this win, right? Where it's Victory Sunday and Victory Monday. Now, I want to enjoy the win, but we all know in Cleveland is the number 1 defense, right?
Yeah.
And so Justin Fields, if you look at trends, right? Trends. He plays well against the Lions. He'll play well for 2.5 games. And then about the second half of the third game, there's always a problem. So he's got to put games together here if you're talking about whether these hard conversations are going to happen. I thought earlier in the week, I think I was on with Parkins and Spiegel, and I said, look, this game is going to be interesting because I don't think it means much to the evaluation of Justin Fields. So I'll tell you why. He plays good against the Lions. Right, he does. So I don't know if it means much if we're talking about evaluating Justin Fields. I know it means much evaluating Eberflus and his defense and closing games. I think you can talk about that side of it.
And I think that's fair. I think also you look at the Browns as an opponent. You're on the road. We'll see how that goes when we start matching that one up. But then they got the Cardinals. Then they got the Falcons, both here, and they closed the season at Green Bay. So there's only 4 more games at this point, and I don't know how they're going to do, but we're looking at them different right now because they've won not only 2 division games, but 2 in a row, and we hadn't seen them win a division game. We had not seen them win 2 consecutive games in the Matt Eberflus era. And now they are. And now, if depending on how they finish the season, you get into those arguments if they're showing that they are, one of these teams gaining momentum at the end of the season, aiming toward next year.
Yeah, and Mully, it's against 2 teams that had winning records at that time. That's another big thing.
That's right.
You're beating the division leader and the second and the team the second in the division. So, yeah, it just muddies the water, right? And maybe it's a good thing for the people at Hallis Hall because you're playing, you're fighting, you're coaching, you're GMing or whatever for your job, and they're doing their job right now, and it's making this conversation we have on this side a little bit more difficult. But like we said at the pregame, man, it's been fun to be able to talk about a team now that you believe can win, that can go out there and be competitive, that you can predict a win, not just go out there and maybe come away with a win with turnovers or takeaways or stuff like that. But now I feel like, okay, well, these 4 games left that they maybe Cole Kmet was right. They can win all 5 on the way out.
Wouldn't that be fantastic? Wouldn't that be oddly interesting
yes.
for the season to end that fashion? All right, we know a lot of people want to check in. 312-644-6767. We're going to come back with all of your phone calls, and we'll do that next on the Great Clips post-game show. It's presented by Tullamore Dew on Chicago Sports Radio 6-7 of The Score.